Zoe Daniel, welcome to 7:30.
Hi, Sarah.
What's this campaign like compared to 2022?
It's different in some ways. I actually have more volunteers this time round than I had last time, which I think says something about community politics, and there's really positive energy in my side of the campaign. The people who are working with me, I've got more than 1,000 volunteers on the ground, really want to embed community independent politics in Goldstein. That said, it's absolutely clear that the Liberal Party want the seat back, and they are throwing absolutely everything at it in terms of boots on the ground and advertising and their proxies working the queues at pre-poll. But as one young voter said to me today, wow, you've got all these smear campaigns running against you, you must be an existential threat. So I choose to be empowered by that behaviour, and I think that my team are really determined to deliver again for the electorate.
Earlier on today, Tim Wilson said that last time 78% of your donors came from Sydney trying to purchase the community, he said. Does it matter where your donors come from?
My donors come from across the spectrum, and I must say I had a look. I thought you might ask a question about donors, funnily enough. And just as in the last campaign, this time, far more of my donations have come from my own campaign fundraising than from Climate 200. At the moment, Climate 200 funding of my campaign is sitting at about 30%. And the vast majority of my donors are people who've donated under $1,000. I have a few larger donors. And those small donors, including the ones, Sarah, who when I door knock say, could I give you $20, could I give you $10, want to see politics done differently, want to see the major parties held to account. And it's the choice of those people to make those donations, and I'm very grateful for them.
What's 30% in a dollar figure, Zoe?
As of yesterday, $506,000.
What does Climate 200 get in return for $500,000?
Well, Climate 200 is a crowdfunding organisation, as you know, just to be clear. So I think currently they have 13,000 donors who want to see politics done differently.
I think
that's
to be clear, it's crowdfunded and there's some large donations as well, just to be clear about that. But go ahead, answer.
There are some large donations, but there are also a lot of small donations to Climate 200.
You wouldn't get that donation from Climate 200, though, obviously, if you weren't aligned on the central issue of climate and the energy transition.
Well, I am aligned on the issue of climate and the energy transition. I mean, Sarah, I was a foreign correspondent who has covered climate-related disasters. I have covered fires, floods, hurricanes, typhoons across the world. I find it incredibly concerning. And so I do believe that the energy transition has to happen and that we have to move away from fossil fuels. And I also believe that Australia is uniquely positioned to do that. So yes, I do believe in that, but it's not because Climate 200's told me to believe in it. That's one of the reasons that I chose to enter politics at the request of a community organisation first, and then Climate 200 came in later and offered some funding.
Is it credible for someone with that visceral personal experience, as well as the work that you've done in the course of the time you've been in Parliament, to enable the formation of government for Peter Dutton?
Well, look, I'm up for the conversation. Whether the opposition leader's up for the conversation, I think, is an open question. I've tried to generate conversation between the opposition leader and the crossbench on a regular basis over the last 3 years.
Let's just be clear about this.
I have to confess I've not been particularly successful.
Yes, we know where Peter Dutton stands on the issue of the renewable transition and nuclear energy. So let me put the question to you again. Is it credible that someone with your position would be open to enabling Peter Dutton to form government?
Well, I think their positioning on climate and energy is problematic. However, if I was to enable either party to form government, if I'm lucky enough to be there, and I'll be grateful if I'm re-elected and am in the room, firstly I would consider what the numbers are in my electorate and nationally, and then any agreement that I was to make to enable either party to form government would be simply that. any policy that was to follow that would be considered on its merits.
But just to be clear, you've been critical of the nuclear policy, not least because, as you say, it would cause the capital investment in renewables to stall. So back to that question, the nuclear policy as proposed by Peter Dutton and a full energy transition that you are calling for are fundamentally incompatible. How is your mind then open to helping Peter Dutton form government?
Well, my mind is open to what the numbers look like, in part. And that's not to say that, you know, whoever has the most wins. I don't think that's necessarily an automatic position either. But I think that we need to see what the numbers are.
Can you just break down that question? What is the threshold for the numbers where you would be prepared to back Peter Dutton to form government? What number would he have to reach?
It's not a single consideration, but I think for argument's sake, if Labor was in the mid-60s and the Coalition was in the early 70s, then I'm not convinced that it would be following the will of the people to try to leapfrog by making up some sort of, you know, coalition to push them over the line. I don't necessarily think that would be appropriate. That said, the pattern of the vote in my electorate is important to me. And obviously, if I am elected on the positions that I hold on these critical issues, and the first preference vote and the pattern of that is also a consideration, then I have to consider that too. And so I understand what you're trying to get at by getting me to, you know, give a sort of no-holds-barred answer to the question, but I actually don't have one, because I will need to consider all of those factors, not only on the day, but in that period after the election, to make a reasoned decision. And that's one of the main reasons that people will elect me if they do, because that's what I do, reasoned decision-making.
Zoe Daniel, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.